It never had a chance to scream. Not because death was sudden, but because it came so slowly, so silently, that no one even realized they were already living in the apocalypse. It began in early 536 AD. One morning, across parts of Europe and Asia, people looked up, and the sky wasn't blue. It was dim, gray, eerily quiet. The sun had vanished behind a veil of ash and mist. Yet there had been no warning, no explosion in the night, no thunder in the skies. Just a silent curtain that descended across the world. In Constantinople, court historian Procopius wrote,
"The sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon."
For months, the sun barely pierced the clouds. Days felt like twilight, nights were darker than ink, and seasons seemed to disappear altogether. Summer came and went, and yet crops refused to grow. The earth was cold. Frost appeared in midsummer. Something was deeply, profoundly wrong. People everywhere tried to explain it the only way they could, through myth, fear, and faith. In the Norse lands, whispers spread that the great wolf Fenrir had begun devouring the sun. In the Christian world, many believed it was divine punishment. In China, court astrologers recorded strange omens and blamed the emperor's rule.
The final winter is here. Ragnarok is upon us.
But I just planted onions.
Then pray they are the last onions anyone eats.
By June, snow was falling in China. In Mesopotamia, a yellow fog blanketed cities. In Ireland, monks wrote of a failure of bread. Crops rotted in the fields before they even bloomed. Herds died. Families migrated. But there was nowhere to go. All across the globe, the same thing was happening. A sudden and inexplicable cooling of the earth. And as modern science would later confirm, temperatures dropped by as much as 2 to 2.5 degrees Celsius. It may not sound like much, but in an agriculture-based society, even a single degree drop can mean mass famine. Now imagine two across the entire northern hemisphere.
Can't harvest wheat? The ground's harder than the bishop's head.
We still have turnips.
Then we eat turnips till we're turnips!
Historians today consider it the worst year to be alive in recorded human history. But what caused this catastrophe? For centuries, no one knew. There are no surviving records of any known volcanic eruption of that scale. No witness accounts of a mountain exploding. And yet, the sky's behavior, the sudden climate change, the sulfur in the air, all pointed to something massive, something global. Fast forward to the late 20th century. Glaciologists drilling ice cores in Greenland discovered an ash and sulfate layered deep beneath the surface. Frozen clues of an enormous volcanic eruption, dating precisely to 536 AD. Later, scientists confirmed another layer around 540, and a third in 547. This wasn't one disaster. It was a cluster of eruptions that set off a climatic chain reaction. The exact location remains debated. Some believe it may have been in Iceland. Others suggest Central America or Indonesia. Wherever it was, it launched so much ash into the upper atmosphere that it effectively blocked sunlight for over a year, maybe longer. And as the world dimmed, something else happened. Human behavior began to change. Panic spread. Religious extremism rose. Civilizations that had stood for centuries began to crack under the weight of hunger and fear. In Europe, the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, struggled to feed its population. In the East, Chinese dynasties suffered agricultural collapse. In Central America, Mayan cities experienced population decline. And across the global north, death was everywhere. As the strange, dim light of 536 lingered, people hoped, prayed that the sun would return. But instead of salvation, the world plunged even deeper into darkness. The year 537 began with more failed harvests. Famine was no longer local, it was global. From Ireland to Korea, from Italy to Peru, food shortages pushed people to desperation. Entire communities were reduced to eating roots, tree bark, even the bones of dead animals. In some regions, cannibalism was rumored. In others, the weak were simply left behind. I watched the mantridis daughter for a sack of barley.
And he gave my last grain to the church. Because if this is not the end of the world, what is?
The economic impact was devastating. Markets collapsed. Trade routes became ghost roads. The Silk Road, once bustling with caravans of spices, silk, and silver, fell quiet. Coinage stopped in parts of the Byzantine Empire. Food, not gold, became the new currency. By 538, frost still appeared in spring. In many places, summer simply didn't exist. With each passing season, populations thinned. And then came the final blow. In 541, a new enemy arrived, silent, invisible, and deadlier than famine. It was carried by rats, hiding in grain sacks aboard merchant ships. It stowed away on boats, traveling from Egypt to Constantinople. And when it reached the heart of the empire, it tore through the city like wildfire. The plague of Justinian had begun. The symptoms were horrifying: sudden fever, painful swellings in the groin and armpits, blackened skin. People dropped dead in the streets. Others locked themselves inside, terrified of breathing infected air. Within weeks, the city of Constantinople was a graveyard.
My neighbor coughed, then dropped. I burned my own house down just to kill the rats.
God is not angry. God has abandoned us.
At its peak, the plague killed an estimated 5,000 to 10,000 people per day in the capital alone. Justinian, the emperor himself, contracted the disease and barely survived. But his empire would never be the same. The army weakened. The economy disintegrated. The dream of restoring the Western Roman Empire died here. Not on the battlefield, but in a pile of unburied bodies. And it didn't stop in Constantinople. The plague spread into Italy, Spain, France, and Egypt. Over the next 2 centuries, it would return in waves, eventually killing as many as 50 million people, nearly half the known world's population. But even for those who survived the plague, the climate remained unforgiving. In the north, the Norse people abandoned their farms. Archaeological digs show sudden collapses in Scandinavian settlements. In Ireland, the Annals of Ulster recorded a failure of bread from the years 536 to 539. Chinese records spoke of yellow dust and summer snow. In Peru and Bolivia, ice core samples reveal the same massive climate disturbance, proving this was truly a planetary disaster. And so the 540s became known as a lost decade. Civilizations didn't just weaken, they transformed. The collapse of the Gupta Empire in India accelerated. The Byzantine Empire retreated inward, and power structures everywhere shifted as people looked for meaning, for scapegoats, and for salvation. In this vacuum, religion surged. In Europe, Christianity spread faster than ever before. People poured into churches, desperate for protection and forgiveness. In Arabia, conditions of famine, drought, and social upheaval would soon give rise to new political and religious movements, laying the groundwork for the rise of Islam. This age of darkness didn't just destroy, it rearranged the world. And as the sun slowly returned, year by year, faintly growing brighter, new generations emerged. But they were changed. Their myths, their fears, their priorities were different. They had grown up in a world without summer, where the sky had turned gray and death was always near. This isn't just a forgotten disaster. It's a reset button in history, one that may have helped shape the map of the modern world. And yet, the cause? Still a mystery. What kind of eruption could dim the sun, freeze the crops, and change the course of human civilization? That's the mystery that haunted scientists for decades. No eyewitnesses, no ancient texts detailing a fiery explosion. Just one day in 536 AD, the skies dimmed and the world fell silent. But the earth never truly forgets. Its glaciers, tree rings, and ocean floors keep the memory buried in ice and soil. Fast forward to the 1990s. Glaciologists drilled deep into Greenland's ice and made a shocking discovery. Trapped within layers of ancient frost were high concentrations of volcanic sulfate, dated precisely to 536 AD. But it didn't stop there. They found 2 more major sulfate spikes, one around 540 and another in 547. This wasn't a single event. It was a volcanic trilogy.
3 catastrophic eruptions in just a decade? That's not a disaster. That's planetary trauma.
Each eruption blasted millions of tons of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. Unlike regular ash, this fine aerosol mist doesn't fall to Earth quickly. It lingers. It reflects sunlight. It cools the planet. Scientists began connecting the dots. Tree ring data from Sweden, Ireland, even Mongolia, all showed stunted growth starting in 536. In California, bristlecone pines, some of the oldest trees on Earth, recorded a decade of stress. This wasn't just local. It was planet-wide climate collapse. So, when did the eruption happen? We still don't know for sure, but there are strong contenders. Some suspect an eruption in Iceland, where subglacial volcanoes could have erupted silently, with massive climatic consequences. Others point to Central America, the tropics, or even Indonesia, where the Rinjani or Krakatoa caldera could have produced a supereruption, much like the infamous Mount Tambora in 1815. And Tambora is key. Tambora's 1815 eruption, the largest recorded in history, caused a year without a summer in 1816. Crops failed in Europe. Famine struck in China. Snow fell in June in New England. That eruption reduced global temperatures by 1 degree Celsius. Now imagine an eruption twice as powerful in 536. Imagine waking up and thinking the world had ended, not because of fire, but because the sun forgot to rise. Even today, the evidence continues to mount. In 2018, a study suggested a massive eruption in El Salvador, known as Ilopango, may have occurred around this time. Other scholars argue that multiple eruptions, including one in North America, created a cascade effect, pushing the planet into a mini ice age. But why does this matter now? Because the Earth's crust is restless. And history, as we've learned, doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. Modern society depends on global supply chains, satellites, communication, and tightly optimized agriculture. A 536 scale eruption today wouldn't just dim the sun. It could crash the global economy, devastate food production, and unleash chaos on a scale we've never seen. Even a smaller eruption like Age of Geological in 2010 grounded flights across Europe. Imagine one 100 times bigger.
We're not ready, not even close. Today, we can predict hurricanes, detect earthquakes, and monitor volcanoes. But we still can't stop them. If another invisible ash veil rose tomorrow, how long would it take before panic set in? Back in 536, people blamed the gods. Today, we'd look to science. But would it save us? The legacy of 536 AD isn't just about what happened. It's about what could happen again. It's a story of survival, of how civilizations broke, adapted, and rebuilt. It reminds us that even in the darkest winters, there is always a spring. But only if we learn from the past.